Sit your ass down, I got a story to tell you. In Texas, we have these things called UIL solo and ensemble contests. My high school orchestra teacher, who was actually the band teacher because our school couldn't afford an orchestra teacher at the time, required that we perform in this contest at the regional level. However, if you achieved a good score, you could compete at the state level if you wanted to. So back in 2012, when I was a sophomore in high school, I performed Fauré's Élégie on the cello at the regional level, and I got a 1, which was the best score you could achieve. My orchestra teacher was able to find a piano accompanist for me at the regional level, but they couldn't accompany me for the state level competition since it was in a city 3 hours away. So, my teacher found another accompanist for the state level contest, and even though my parents had to pay this guy like $30, I was only able to give this new accompanist the piano part for this Élégie on the day of our performance. You know, like a responsible high schooler. And the accompanist was only able to read the score on our bus ride to the competition, and he essentially sight read the piece at our competition. Yeah, it went about as well as you could imagine. Actually, no, it went way worse than you could imagine. First of all, I was listening to other performances that were taking place in the room I was going to perform in, and lo and behold, someone else also played the same exact Élégie. Worse yet, their performance was better than any of my practice sessions so far. About an hour later, I go in to perform, and who's judging me? Anton Tsang, who was married to Bion Tsang, a cellist I revered at the time because of some incredible performances he made of Brahms's Hungarian dances. Bro, I didn't even know they lived in Texas until this competition. What's worse, on top of my accompanist sight reading the piano part for the Élégie, and Mrs. Levine saying exchanging some funny looks with me given the funkiness of the performance, a fucking fire alarm goes off mid-performance. Long story short, my performance left a lot to be desired, and I ended up getting a score of 3, which is basically C tier, but this was at the state level, and I was mostly self-taught for the cello at the time, so I couldn't be too mad at myself. That is, until I was walking down some stairs, missed a step, and sprained my ankle on the way down, cello on my back the entire time, in front of a crowd. Later that day, I decided, meh, my girlfriend and I are really on the rocks, and today couldn't get any worse. I'm going to send her a breakup text. You know, like a responsible high schooler. Anyways, before my little tumble, my accompanist and I talked for a bit, and after accusing me and my generation of being high because we seem to be so forgetful nowadays, he ironically said something that I would never forget. He talked to me about dynamic markings and told me that I need to not play forte just so that it's loud. Of course, not having many music lessons and being unsure of what he meant, I asked him to elaborate. He said that sometimes dynamics aren't just an indicator of volume, they also characterize a piece and give it personality. The best way to demonstrate this to y'all is actually through the very piece that I fumbled that day. Élégie by Gabriel Fauré. My favorite performance is this one that a friend showed me back in 2011, and it's the one that I posted on my main channel, The Exarian, with Daniel Gaisford on the cello and Josefina Melgar on the piano. The main theme of this piece plays 3 times before going into the B section. The first time in forte, the second time in piano, and the third time in pianissimo. Gaisford makes sure to give each of these iterations a unique character through an incredibly sentimental performance. In the first iteration of the main theme, Fauré makes it very clear that the character of this Élégie is sad, crying even, as if he is experiencing denial and anger at the same time. The notation makes this clear too, as he indicates that the cello should play this first iteration of the main theme, using as much of the full bow for each beat, while also making the phrasing clear, which not only produces a louder, bellowing sound, but also gives the cellist much more room to play with vibrato, which Gaisford uses to his advantage, really making the cello sound like someone in emotional turmoil. The second iteration is much more contemplative, and the piano's role here cannot be taken for granted. In this reiteration, the piano's hands play separated from each other rather than one homogeneous entity, with the right hand moving higher up the piano and the left hand moving lower. In doing this, the piano gives the present situation much more weight as the bass steps downwards, while the treble builds up the tension that ticks away in our head, almost like a clock that's telling us our time is running out. Fauré also gives the cello much more limited bowing space here, literally half as much as he permitted for the first iteration. As the character of the Élégie is trying to process and maybe come to terms with their situation, his anger resurfaces and pushes him into the bargaining stage of grief, which does not go well. It ends with him fighting and screaming as the clock comes back and reminds him that time moves forward regardless of whether he's ready to move on. In the third iteration, Fauré makes a choice to drop the tempo from piano to pianissimo, bypassing pianissimo. And once again, Gaisford recognizes this distinct change beautifully. All vibrato is dropped. The notes are practically out of breath, like someone's voice after they spent some time screaming and ugly crying. Hollow, scratchy, tired, with barely any energy to continue fighting the inevitable. This is just one of the many heart-wrenching ways that music has been able to effectively capture depression. We get the same lesson, the same amount of time passing us by, but nothing in our power to change any of it. Fauré eventually gets us to accept the gravity of our situation, but not without taking us down memory lane in the gorgeous B section. You'll have to listen to the piece on your own to see what I mean. If you have any examples of dynamics being used as personality traits or storytelling devices, or if you have a different take on how to utilize dynamics in a piece, or fuck it, if you have a personal anecdote about music too, share it in the comments. Let's talk.